Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Behind the Reel. I'm your host, John, and today we've got episode 16, season 2. We're going to be talking about the Kansas Kayak Anglers event out at world famous Dorado Lake in El Dorado, Kansas. Everybody's favorite fishery here in the Sunflower State. I'm kidding, of course, but we had 21 anglers battle it out under some windy, hot conditions. I would say that we had a pretty abrupt introduction to summer this past weekend. So I think we might have had a few people walk away with a little bit of a sunburn, maybe even a windburn. So welcome back to Kansas kayak fishing. And kicked it off with a pretty impressive limit. We've got two of the top 3 anglers and a special guest appearance from the 4th place finisher. We're going to talk about a 93-inch limit to take the win. So there's some talk that, it's going to be a hard limit to beat throughout this year. We have some pretty amazing fisheries ahead of us, but that 93-inch limit is going to be a hard one to beat. So we're going to talk about that. We've got also one of the 2-man team that took away the team series as well, and we're going to talk to him, and his teammate had a pretty impressive day as well and held up his end of the bargain on that deal. So we had something we'll talk about a little bit more, but 14 fish over 18 inches, and on that 2-man team over a 17-inch average, I believe. So very nice there. We'll get into that. We've got Jay Schwartzkopf in 1st place, and we've got Cole Spriggs who took 3rd. So we'll look at Tourney X. We'll look at some of the fish that were caught, and we've already got some people chiming in. Organic, what's up, man? Appreciate you coming out. And let's see. There was one more thing I wanted to mention here before we get the podcast started. And just like always, do me a favor, share this over on your local fishing group. Share it with a fishing buddy of yours. Let's get the information out there. We've got more tournaments coming up. This is just event number 2 of 8, I believe. So if anybody is wanting to get into the Kansas kayak fishing tournament scene, we will be happy to have you. Right now, we have got a deal going on with F5 Rod Company. I just want to shout them out. They've got a contest that's going on right now. If you are filming yourself, if you've got some cast-to-catch footage and you're running F5 rods, they've got a deal going on right now that is going to pay out in $500 in cash. So if you're looking to upgrade your rods, now's a good time to get into an F5 rod. And especially if you've got cameras running. I've got cameras running because I want people to know how much I struggle out there. Every now and then I get a fish catch on there. So hopefully I can luck into one, get it on camera, and maybe I'll get paid out for a blooper or something like that. But yeah, check those guys out, F5 Rod Company, and win yourself some money. You might be able to use that money to buy a couple more rods or maybe even a couple legal dope swim baits. Got Casual Bass Guy in the house here. And no, I was not. That's a sensitive subject. Yes, El Dorado Lake has robbed me of one of my – I don't even want to talk about it. You're killing me, man. All right, let's go ahead. We're going to bring on tonight's guest, Jay and Cole. We'll get this thing kicked off. What's up, guys?
What's going on?
All righty. So are you guys excited to get back out to El Dorado or what?
I know Jay might be.
You had
not
a great
for another year.
You gonna put it off now? Yeah, I don't think anybody except for me goes out there to fun fish. And then I just, I can't ever seem to do very well out there either. But anyways, yeah. So lots of impressive fish. I think for some reason just come to mind, like what, an 18-inch smallie, Cole? That was a fun one to run into. We had 14 fish over 18 inches. I feel like that's pretty impressive for a 21-man tournament. And, we won't talk about how many people got the old skunk, but lots of big fish in there. What do you think your guys' biggest takeaway from that event? I guess maybe Cole, starting out with this was your first time fishing El Dorado, is that right?
There was. So it was always a bucket list lake in Kansas. And I remember years ago, it was kind of dubbed the barren wasteland of Kansas. It was known as a place that didn't have a lot of fish, specifically bass. And I think that really aids to big fish, right? So over time, as
There
the
you go.
bass get introduced through KDWP, they begin to kind of grow. They have ample amount of forage. So we all know the crappie have taken off in that lake. I think it'll be a good lake, but my biggest takeaway from that lake is that it fishes small, meaning that it's a big lake, but there's not bass, around every corner.
Sure. Jay, you've fished it a couple times now?
Yeah, it's my second tournament there anyway.
And how did you do last year?
I got second last year.
Okay. So you've been fairly consistent out there, and so just 2 times. Like, did you have an opportunity to pre-fish or anything either time?
I pre-fished Friday before the tournament this time, and last year I went down like a week before and kind of looked at some spots. But last year the water was real high, so complete different.
Yeah.
Setup,
Very
basically.
low. Very low. Yeah, it looked totally different than it did last year with the high water.
Yeah.
And okay, so if you want to talk about maybe what you found out, and we can let's do this first. Let's get into the tournament here in a minute. I've got something. Hopefully I have it handy here to pull up. But I want to do I've got a little icebreaker thing that we've done the last time or two. It's called This or That Fishing. It's the fishing edition of This or That. So I want you guys each to answer this for me. This will kind of help viewers get an idea of your style of fishing, and just get an idea for how you are out there on the water, and what kind of baits you like to throw and that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and get this kicked off. Let's say, okay, this or that. If you got to choose one or the other, are you going with the Texas rig or are you going with the jig? Start with you, Jay.
I mean, Texas rig's been what I've been throwing pretty much this year. So,
and
Texas
I guess
jig, unless it can be a swim jig, or Texas rig or swim jig, I guess. I don't.
Okay, so if it came down to a Texas rig or a swim jig,
probably a swim jig.
Probably a swim jig. And are you throwing that any time of year?
Warmer part of the year for the most part.
And what are you Texas rigging?
Brush hog type style baits really my go-to.
Okay. What about you, Cole? This or that? Are you going with the Texas rig or are you going with the jig?
I'm going Texas rig.
Okay.
Kind of a bait I grew up on, and it feels comfortable. So.
And what are you Texas rigging?
So it's going to be a brush hog, or probably a baby brush hog, or a Cinco, 5-inch Cinco.
Okay. I like it. Organic says he caught 17 fish, just not bass. Yeah, that sounds like El Dorado.
Those crappie on the banks, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's probably that time. It's probably time for Cole to bust out the little crappie hair jig.
You never know.
Did that play at all?
I did not. I targeted deep just for a minute, and I ended up finding they were white bass, not the bass we were after. So I gave up on it pretty quickly.
Okay, so let's go. Are we doing shaky head or are we going with the drop shot, Jay?
Shaky head. I don't like dealing with the drop shot.
Okay. And you throwing the Dizzy Diamond on that bad boy, or what are you going with?
Not so much. I like, I think Zoom meathead, they call it, and some of the Berkeley little twitch minnows and stuff like that.
Okay. All right, something a little bit different. Okay. What about you, Cole?
I am following in Jay's footsteps right now, so I'm gonna pick the shaky head. I know that the paddle tail, whether it's kind of biz baits or different plastic providers, I find that having that little bit of green on the end of it, just kind of helps make it pop and adds to the action. So that's been a go-to combo.
And did you say a paddle tail?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Okay.
not a paddle tail, just this flattened out smash tail.
Okay. I got you. Nice. Okay. Heck yeah. I'm gonna join in. I'm gonna go shaky head on that one, and I am throwing the Dizzy Diamond, and I probably caught 3/4 of my fish on a shaky head this event, and they were all on the Dizzy Diamond. So shout out to Biz Baits. Jay's repping them there. We talked about it before we went live here. He got in on their Black Friday special and got that sweet banner. So shout out to Biz Baits. But yeah, I don't want to give away all my secrets, but if you want to get yourself a nice shaky head worm and get one from Biz Baits, go on over there. And I talked about it here recently. They got the transition packs. You can get 3 packs of these things for $10 if you just kind of do the mystery transition pack. You don't really know what you're going to get, but a lot of times it'll turn out to be some pretty cool colors in between, switching between colors. So kind of a cool deal they got going on there. All right, so next one we'll go with Cole on this one. Jerk bait or a swim bait?
Jerk bait.
Okay.
I tend to be a little more finesse, like the pause on those. Yeah. I find that they work year round, not just early spring.
Yeah, and I know the kid that was fishing with me, Ace. Shout out to Ace. He's on here watching. He caught a couple on the jerk bait at this event. Did you throw it at all?
I had it tied on, never picked it up. I ended up finding them too shallow to really need to throw that.
Yeah. Okay. Jay, what about you?
I'd say jerk bait also. I don't necessarily throw either one a lot, but
okay,
I do like throwing a jerk bait sometimes.
And what jerk bait is your go-to if you are throwing one? Do you have a go-to?
No.
It's whichever one's in your box.
Whichever one I don't feel like or ain't too worried about losing that day.
Yeah. Cole, do you have a favorite?
I don't. This is going to depend on how I want to kind of match the shad pattern or what I'm trying to match that day. But I like to look for the ones that dive 4 to 6 feet because typically I'm trying to find suspended fish.
Okay. We going Cole, we going shallow or we going deep?
That's a toss-up, John.
Say this time of year. Let's say this time of year if you have to shallow.
Yeah, I want to find them moving up on either a feeding pattern or a spawn pattern if I can.
But you like to fish deep as well.
I do.
Jay?
Yeah, shallow for sure.
All year?
As much of the year as I can, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Heck yeah. I've seen you. I've seen you around. I usually run into you. I don't venture out in Cole's part of the lake usually. Okay. So all right, Jay, are you going with green pumpkin or are you going with watermelon red?
I guess it depends on the situation. Probably green pumpkin, but I like
at Wilson. What are you doing at Wilson?
Oh, Wilson depends. I don't know.
Clearwater.
Depends on where you're at. Clearwater, watermelon. Back in the dirty stuff, then it doesn't even matter. Just something to catch their attention.
Oh, Wilson doesn't have dirty water. Cole?
I'm probably going probably going watermelon most of the time. My ideal color in my soft plastic, if you were to pull my arsenal, it'd be I like green pumpkin with a kind of a purple or a UV fleck. That tends to make up probably 80% of the soft plastics that I have.
Nice. Okay. I will say I was a little bit surprised. So Ace and we were back in the creek and dirty water. I mean, it's in El Dorado. Everything's pretty dirty. Even the clear water is not very clear. But we were back up in the creek, dirty water, and dude's throwing like a translucent Cinco. I mean, it's like got some hint of watermelon or something, and he was smacking them on him. So I think maybe at that point It was just how much does color really matter? I think if you're tossing it on their heads and they feel the vibration of that. I think he was throwing a wacky rig, but anyways, yeah. How much does that really even matter? Is that more of a confidence thing for anglers in those situations where you're flipping up on the bank and stuff? Probably doesn't matter a ton. Okay, Jay, vibrating jig or spinnerbait?
Vibrating jig.
Okay, is that something that caught you any fish this weekend?
Nope, not a single one.
Spinnerbait either?
No, I threw both of them, but didn't get bit on either one. I don't know. I don't have much confidence in a spinnerbait. I know they work, and I know everybody throws them, but
not your deal.
I have to force myself to do it.
Okay. If you go power technique, where do you go with then?
Like
crankbait or
like
moving like a
bladed jig. Or I'll throw a crank a lot too if it seems like it's possible or going to work.
Okay. What about you, Cole?
Both of which I don't throw very often, but I'd probably say a spinnerbait, just as a good fish locator. Cover a lot of water and move fast. It's a timing bait. It's got to be the right time of the day and right portion of their feeding pattern, but probably don't pick it up enough. How about you, John?
I've been back and forth over the years. It's like I go through a phase where I'll kind of throw one or the other. I'm not very good at knowing when to throw which one. I haven't really decided. But this year, I haven't caught a single chatterbait fish. But I've caught quite a few on the spinnerbait this year. So I was able to get out and catch quite a few early on and catch them in that post spawn where they're hitting that spinnerbait pretty good. I did catch one this weekend on it. It wasn't a big one, but I couldn't really get anything going on the spinnerbait, and I had to slow down. So, but I would say right now spinnerbait, but I know here pretty soon the chatterbait's probably going to be more of a player as the water warms up. And maybe not. I just maybe need to go to like more of those willow blades and burn it a little bit faster, and but I have a tendency to just kind of force the fish to try to do what I want them to do, and that don't always work. Okay, so we're gonna go clear water or dirty water. What's your preference, Jay?
Somewhat dirty. I'd say, foot visibility. Foot and a half. I'm pretty happy.
Okay.
Clear water annoys me. If I can see the fish and I can't get them to bite, I get kind of over it.
Okay. Just are they a little bit tougher to catch in that situation then, or?
I don't know if they're necessarily tougher. It's just the fact that I know they're there and I can't get them to do anything.
What about you, Cole?
So I'm opposite of Jay. I want as clear water as I can find. At least I know they're there, is how I look at it. But I'm a finesse guy, light line, so kind of plays to how I like to fish.
Yeah. Okay. Let's this maybe goes into it. We going spinning or casting gear? Cool.
So I'd like to say casting rod. I love throwing them, but I probably, at least in tournaments, throw my spinning rod well, in the majority of the time. So I like those medium lights, with the bass tip. So I'm basically throwing crappie rods at bass.
Nice. And that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I threw a spin. I caught most of mine on a spinning rod this weekend, which is not my preference. I would say casting for sure, but I just couldn't put the spinning rod down when they're hitting it. It's just that's what I had to go with, and a little bit those small fish feel a little bit bigger, so that's kind of fun too. Jay,
probably casting for the most part. I always have a spinning rod with me, at least one, sometimes two, but sometimes it never gets picked up. I throw a Ned and a Nico a lot, so
Yeah.
we'll throw the spinner for that. But I
Did
never,
it get
I
bit
didn't even
this
make
weekend?
I didn't even make a cast with a spinning rod.
Okay.
So
Nice. Well, if you don't have to, then yeah, why?
right.
I agree. Okay, Jay, if you had to pick one or the other, are you going with 1 10-pound fish, or would you rather have that 30-pound limit? So we're going to talk like not necessarily a tournament situation, because obviously the 30-pound limit's going to win you, the tournament, where the 1 10-pounder probably won't. But what are you going with?
Probably take 1 10-pounder if it's not a tournament.
Yeah, you're always chasing those double digits. That's
Yeah.
that would be my vote as well.
Say that again. Sorry.
I would take the 1 10-pounder myself, just like Jay. What about you, John?
Yeah, I would. I would as well. I think I would take the 10-pounder. I may have to cut this thing short. Apparently, my wife and daughter are stranded at the softball field. Their car isn't working. So that may have to happen here very soon. I'm not sure, but I will. We may have to postpone this thing. But okay, so we kind of got into that. Just a little bit of an icebreaker there. So kind of a fun little deal. But that'll give everybody kind of an insight into your style of fishing. If Jay, if you want to talk about maybe kind of what you found pre-fishing, and then how maybe that information helped you, or maybe you had to abandon what you found, just kind of how that played into tournament day.
I started out Friday morning and went to the area I fished the previous year, just to kind of look at it. And with the water being so much lower, I wasn't sure if I could even get back there. And I caught a couple little fish on the way back. There was enough water to fish back there, but I didn't really like the looks of it. So loaded up and drove around to one of the creeks, and it was kind of tough to launch there, but I figured it was worth a try and put in there and threw a bladed jig and a spinnerbait a little bit and didn't get bit. So had a Texas rig on and went ahead and just buried the hook to where I wouldn't hook any of the fish, and started just slowly working up the creek and throwing at every little piece of wood I could find, basically, and they was hitting it and swimming off with it. And so I tried like 3 or 4 different Texas rig baits and seen if one worked better than the other. Went back to basically my starting bait in a different color, and they was hitting it pretty good. So I got out of that area, loaded up, and looked at some other spots throughout the day, but didn't really do anything with any of those. And so I went there first thing in the tournament morning, and nobody showed up, so I had it all to myself basically, and started out with the buzz bait, caught 11 or 12 pretty quick on a buzz bait through the morning, and then started throwing that same Texas rig and just kept catching all day.
Heck yeah. So yeah, and I know you like catching them on a buzz bait. Cole,
Yeah.
did you get any topwater action?
Nope. And honestly, I didn't even give it a whirl. Never saw anything move in that direction, but that's a great idea.
Yeah, I threw one. I lost 2 fish right off the bat on it. It was still kind of dark when I started throwing it, and yeah, and then I kind of abandoned it. Later on, I found out that my drag wasn't tightened down. That was probably what my problem was. So, but yeah, it seemed like there was some topwater stuff going on, but I couldn't actually get one in the boat on it. But so you said you caught quite a few off the buzz bait, and then did that bite die off and you decided to switch over, or?
Yeah, probably. I was throwing the buzz bait up to probably 9:30 or so, I'm guessing, and it went from getting bit somewhat, I don't know, at least every 15 minutes to probably closer to maybe 30 minutes between bites. And so I just threw some other stuff a little bit, and then went straight to that Texas rig for the most part. Started getting bit pretty much right away, so
And they were
stuck with
just
that.
right on the bank on the Texas rig, or
Yeah, close to the bank. I mean, there's any lay down, any log
Yeah.
jam, anything close to wood, basically. It didn't have to be close to the actual shore.
okay. What about you, Cole? As far as like pre-fishing and stuff?
I didn't get much of a chance to pre-fish, but I was able to throw in for a few hours Saturday afternoon before setting up camp, and I end up kind of pre-fishing maybe a little differently. I have an idea of where I think I should go, and then I go pre-fish the other areas that I thought maybe, so I can either put them in or rule them out. But being a new lake, I maybe caught a couple fish pre-fishing and just didn't have the confidence that I found any kind of patterns. So it was the day went a lot better for the tournament than I expected based on the pre-fishing.
Okay, heck yeah. And what were you catching them on?
Yeah, so I was catching most of mine on either a baby brush hog or for the most part a shaky head. And opposite of Jay, I really caught most of my keeper fish after 9 or 10 o'clock. Much later in the afternoon, I just really had to slow down, kind of anchor down and sit on spots for a while. But I was around a lot of anglers. There wasn't a lot of coves out of the wind, so when I was able to have one, it was actually enjoyable. A lot of guys to talk to, and I don't mind the crowded banks. You get to kind of have a little camaraderie that way. So good.
So were the guys around you all catching fish, or did you find out later on that some of them
I
weren't
think some of
catching
them
them?
did, some of them didn't. We struggled on keeper size, 15 inches and above. And while I was pretty consistent in catching a fish every 15 minutes throughout most of the tournament, it wasn't until later in the day that the bigger fish moved up, or at least were ticked off enough at all the lures getting thrown at them that they finally bit something.
Sure. Okay. And talk about the wind. Was that something? So you just had to completely get out of it? I mean, I think it was up around 20 and probably had gusts over 25. I'm not exactly sure, but did you ever catch them in the wind, or was it just too much going on and had to completely get away from it?
I know I had to. I had a pretty sizable main lake point that I had identified quite a few smallmouth on pre-fishing, and ended up hooking a pretty decent sized smallie on. After about 9 o'clock, though, even with the power pull down, I was unable to hold myself in that wind with enough waves washing over the back. So it just, once I got really out into the main channel of the lake where the wind was whipping, it wasn't necessarily unsafe. It was just, you couldn't hold yourself in a position to really make very many casts.
Sure. Jay, were you able to kind of tuck yourself away from it, or did you still have to fight some wind?
I was pretty much out of the wind.
The creek we were in was like it was still getting hit with the wind, but once you got back in there a ways, you could get away from it. And I'm assuming that was yours kind of the same way. Like if you were out like closer to the main lake, were you still getting hit with the wind? Or I'm trying to think.
Not so much, because out towards the main lake there was only about 6 inches of water, so
okay,
I wasn't even trying to go there.
Yeah. So I mean, a couple times I kind of peeked out and tried to fish against the wind back up in the creek, and I just couldn't get anything going there. But yeah, so even back in the creeks, in some of those creeks, you're still getting hit with that wind. So, but let's see here. I've got the Tourney X thing. Let me share this. Did you have any memorable catches that you want to share? You got a 20-incher here, Jay. What do you have to say about that thing?
No, it was on the buzz bait, so that's always fun.
Oh yeah.
Water just kind of disappeared under it when it opens the mouth. It looked like hit and dug in, and it's kind of a short fight, really.
Was it?
Like I could tell it was heavy, but he didn't wrap up around anything or do anything stupid. So
yeah.
I thought it was a little bigger than a 20 to start with. I knew Ryan had a 20, so I was trying to get another quarter out of it at least. But
he had his pretty early on in the day, right?
Yeah, he caught it at 6 something, I think.
Oh wow!
And
that
then
thing's got some shoulders, don't it?
Yeah, it was a solid fish.
Yeah.
His tiebreaker fish he caught right in front of me at the end of the day, so that kind of hurt.
Yeah. So you had that 20, then you had an 18 3/4. That got some black spots on it, don't it?
Yeah, a lot of them did. Probably half the fish I caught had the black spots.
Really? Seems like back up in the creeks is where I see a lot of that. Then you had, what is that, 18 1/4, another big old plump one, 18 1/4, 17 3/4. That was one of your early fish, huh?
Yeah, that was the first fish of the day. Probably about the third cast.
Heck yeah, and that was a buzzbait fish, 17 3/4. Yep. And then Cole, you've got 18 smallmouth. Okay.
Yeah, and if you look, it's she must have been on a bed because it was in about 6 inches of water, and that tail was rubbed.
Yeah.
Off of it. So fun fish, and pre-fishing, I had one over 18 as well. So it's
nice.
Good to see the smallies making a run in that lake.
Yeah, I think my PB smallie out of El Dorado, about that size. I don't think I've caught one any bigger than 18 1/4. And you got a largemouth 18-incher and 17 1/2.
Largie.
Did you have another smallie in here?
I did. I think it's the last one.
16 3/4 and 16 1/2. Is that?
That's a smallie. Or
that, I don't know what that thing is.
Some kind of hybrid.
Yeah.
Maybe when I caught it, it was a spot smallie mix. But
yeah. What do they call that?
Mean mouth or
mean mouth. I think that's probably what that is.
Yeah. Had all smallie markings, but was built a little differently.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. That's cool. Heck yeah. Nice. Okay. Let's see here. All right. So we got that. Now your team score. This isn't right on here, but I misspoke at the and actually I didn't misspeak. I thought I misspoke. It was you guys had $104 payout, but that was your score as well. It was 104.
So you're right on both sides.
Yeah. So I was like, and then I did the math, and it was over 17-inch average. So you had a couple 18s you submitted, and then a 17 1/2, and then your teammate Mark, he's in 8th place, 18 1/2, 16 1/2, 15 1/2. So yeah, you guys ended up with over a 17-inch average. So really, really good day for the team series for sure.
Yeah, it was fun.
So if I hit you guys up and ask you to come fish with me at El Dorado, you're just gonna say we'll see you next year, huh?
I think that lake, I got a lot more exploring to do out there, so I'd take you up on it, John.
Okay.
I'm willing to fish it more. It's just
a little bit of
2.5 hours out of the way.
Yeah, you got Wilson right next door to you, don't you?
Yeah.
So
well,
that's the next one. That's the next one on the schedule, ain't it?
Yeah, I think so.
You're both looking forward to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a cool lake. You're lucky that's close for you, Jay.
Yeah, well, other than a tournament every weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a boat tournament this weekend, at least one. There's 1 to 2, 3
probably 2 or 3
almost every weekend. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to avoid it when I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Okay. Well, it looks like the girls got it figured out. I was stressing out a little bit about that, so I figured maybe I ought to call it a night. But okay, well, we're back in the game, so I can focus a little bit now. Um, Asen says he caught a lot of his bigger fish on the chatterbait. Did either one of you? I think you said, Jay, you didn't fish it at all, but
No, I threw it some, but I didn't get bit, and I don't know. It's one of them baits. If I don't get bit within 10 minutes, I'm probably not going to pick it back up.
it's not a huge confidence.
I have confidence in it, but it just I don't know. I feel like they're going to bite it quick if they're going to bite it at all, for some reason.
And then no for you, Cole.
No, I'd love to be able to say I fish a chatterbait well, but I just never have.
Yeah. What did you fish much of moving baits this with all that wind and stuff? That didn't play at all for you, huh?
Nope. I found that later in the day, if I pinned myself casting into the wind and let my baits kind of sit and drag with the wind, in a sense, to look pretty natural and something gets swept up the bank, that's where I found most of my bites. So the perk of a kayak is you can use that to your advantage, and if you need to get right up on the shore, you can.
What that's something that I'd like to bring up here. What kind of advantages do you feel like you have fishing out of the kayak? And then, did that help? I think Jay probably will talk about how that it, probably played to his, was an advantage for him where he was fishing at. But yeah, talk about that, Jay. If you want to take off with that, and maybe just being able to get into tighter spaces and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd say I don't think you could have got a boat up there, like a full size boat at least. Maybe a little
Yeah.
flat bottom or something. But
Yep.
other than that, just quiet. I was,
Mm-hmm.
graph turned off, pedaling as minimal as I could, and
Sure.
just kind of moving as quiet as I could pretty much all day.
Yeah. And I know when I was, in that creek that I was back up in, I had a couple people tell me that they were getting boats back there, and I have no idea how. Like I maybe a little, flat bottom, 10-foot John boat deal, uh, and man, they probably had to bust out the paddles if they got through this thing. But I mean, my Hobie drives hitting the bottom, in certain parts just to get back up in there, and then it kind of gets deeper, right? But there were parts that there is no way you're getting a bass boat, like a fiberglass boat or anything, back up in there. So certainly was an advantage to where I was. I didn't see a single soul out there besides somebody that was fishing from the bank, and yeah, there was parts where I had to just paddle. I mean, I couldn't even pedal through parts of it. Um, Now, Cole, on a day like Saturday, were you wishing you were in a big boat, or?
I have most of the benefits other than the go fast. So I do have a trolling motor that I can throw on as needed with spot lock, and that's handy mainly for retying and a power pole as well to anchor down. But I think a lot about casting angles when I approach fish and structure, and sometimes the ability to get back in behind and present something moving to shore can make a really big difference in getting bigger fish to bite. And that was one of the things that I played, even though where I was at was Main Lake and plenty deep enough to get a boat in and out of there. Oftentimes, being able to shift that up or pull yourself around a piece of structure to create that different presentation angle is really helpful. So, kind of like you, John, I'm a guy that also has a bass boat, and I find myself taking my kayak the vast majority of the time because I just enjoy that much slower pace, much more focused fishing. I tend to get a little antsy if I could hammer down and run somewhere else.
Yeah. So you find that you ultimately catch more fish in the kayak, or?
I do, and I know that that's a big debate item, right? But
Yeah.
I allude that to it's my style. I'm a very slow, kind of methodical. I'd rather convince a fish to bite than wait on a reaction or throw a reaction style bait. So that's just the way that I like to fish. So being able to kind of lock down in a kayaks, to Jay's point, be stealthy. I've certainly had moments where I've even seen turning the graph off change the bite.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works, but it does.
Yep, it does.
Is a big key. So I'll keep doing it while I can still drag a kayak into the water.
You know what? None of us are getting any younger. I'll say that. And I'm just going to leave my hat on for this podcast so you guys don't know any different. But I'm telling you, I set the hook into a fish this weekend, and I instantly got a cramp in my arm. And my elbow has been sore all week. Like, I can't explain it. So I might have to take the bass boat out a little more than I'd like to. But I'm with you, man. Like, I think it's a confidence thing. I really think it's a confidence thing is a big part of it. But it is kind of funny to hear you say that, you know, you have all this confidence in fishing out of a kayak because you are more of a finesse fisherman. But then Jay talks about how he has. Hi, Leland. That's my son. He's here also, and he just thinks it's hilarious. So, but Jay's kind of the opposite, right? Or I don't know. I guess you're known to catch him on like a Nico and stuff too.
Yeah,
but
I think I came from finesse really. My local little city lake that I fish all the time, probably 90% of the times a finesse bite. So
yeah,
I do my fair share of that. But if I can power fish them or throw a moving bait, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know what it is. And I think maybe to your point, Cole, just having the option to just completely go to the other end of the lake and be there in a matter of 5 minutes, you know, and not have to be completely wore out from all the pedaling or whatever, or, you know, like just having that option, you know, that in your mind, you're more dedicated, you're more, you know, obligated to stay in that area. So it kind of just makes you milk that spot. So yeah, that is interesting. I feel like, yeah, there's people out there that would say the total opposite, you know, that they like the ability to move around more, and that would maybe catch them more fish. I could see that. But Ace is saying he wished he took his trolling motor on the way back because the wind was pushing into the creek, and getting into the creek wasn't a chore, but getting out of the creek was a huge pain in the butt. And I made the bad recommendation to leave his motor behind. So sorry about that, buddy.
And his identifier.
All right, that's on you, Ace. That is on you. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm sure that's a sore subject, but he
won't forget again.
He won't forget again. He would have had a 5th place finish. He had 83 1/4 inches. Very impressive limit. 2nd tournament ever. And he did very well. He might have caught more fish than I did. But I just want to say, in my defense, I'm driving and I say, hey, you know, pull up the identifier for me in your Tourney X app. So he gets on his phone. He pulls it up. I can see it on his phone. I'm like, okay, what does that say? P91, whatever it was, right? And I think that's right. P91, something like that. P19, P91. And so he has it on his phone, and I'm writing it down on my hand. And then I just assume he followed suit and never thought to like tell him that. Now, he had fished a tournament with us before, and apparently he never used an identifier there, so he really didn't know any different. But I wish I would have known. I felt bad about it later, but I was very glad that he didn't lose any money because of me. But anyways, it was fun to have him tag along with me, and yeah, I might have to be careful all of my secret spots I show him, because he catches them. If you put him around fish, he's going to catch them. So, sorry, was one of you saying something?
Nope, just saying that's awesome. Glad to see younger guys getting into it, and especially ones that are stick like him.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so here's something else too. We talked about 14 fish over 18 inches. That to me was an impressive stat. We had, now it says 103 fish caught. I believe that's going to include all of the culls that were on Tourney X. I know there's probably a good amount of fish that weren't ever submitted, but you get all the way down to 11th place, and from 11th place you have half of the field, a little over half of the field out of 21 anglers caught a 5 fish limit. So I feel like that's not horrible, but then you get to immediately the next place finisher, and you have a 3 fish, 2 fish, 1 fish limit there. So it really teeters off very quickly. We know Ace caught a limit there as well. So, if we factor that in, that makes it look a little bit better. But what do you guys think about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 skunks, and then you got a couple people with, one or two fish? What do you guys think about that, as far as like, what does that say about the lake? And maybe Cole, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but does that change your opinion about it? Or what do you think, like, moving forward? Do we come back to this lake? I mean, we know it has potential, but maybe just go into that. Jay, if you want to start it off.
I think, to me, it shows, I don't know, there's a lot of dead water. You can make a bad choice real easy, probably. There's a lot of the lake that looks pretty good, and it might have fish in it, but they're so spread out, you're not going to, put together a pattern or a limit or whatever. But then if you find the right areas, they're stacked.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with Jay. If El Dorado was 30 minutes from my house, I'd be fishing it a lot. I really believe that lake holds big fish, and is on the right kind of upswing to have a good solid bass population. The downside that I think you have to pay attention to is the number of anglers in an event, because it fishes small. It's one of those where I think it's a fantastic lake, has a lot of potential, but if you had a 60 man kayak field out there, it may feel like bumper boats just because of where you'd have to go to catch them.
Okay. I've heard that argument for Milford. Do any of you have an opinion on that?
Never fished it.
I would say Milford's very similar.
A lot bigger.
It's a lot bigger, but it's a lot less active shoreline. And as a kayak, in the kayak community, shoreline's kind of everything. It's how you orient yourself without being under motor. So it can be another one of those lakes that has large swaths of people in a single area.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that. Now, so 21 anglers isn't too much for El Dorado, is it?
No.
Is 41 anglers?
Depends on the wind.
Yeah.
And if the water's up or not.
Yeah.
3 more foot of water, I think, would add a lot of more options.
Now, what, it was coming out of the southwest? So there was a lot of west, did you say where you were fishing, Cole, roughly part of the lake?
I was on the west end of the lake, and I had pre-fished mainly the west end in anticipation of the wind. So I had probably worked maybe a third of the main body shoreline on the west end.
Yeah.
Again, and I don't know if it's because, you can tell me, John, if it was due to the low water, but there was a lot of incredibly gradual banks that didn't provide any contour or structure, which really kind of limited the pockets I focused in on.
A lot of that, yes, but just putting more water on the bank isn't going to do a ton for that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that western bank is pretty shallow and featureless, I guess you could say. A lot of side of the lake, which can be good, but not a ton of cover. And I bet you a lot of that cover was out of water. I'm not sure. because I really haven't even been over to that part of the lake this year yet. But there is some, and I guess it depends. Like, I wonder how many people were down by the dam fishing around like Five Fingers and that ramp down there. Then you have, up kind of further towards the like Sailboat Cove, and then a little bit south of there, you've got the old rock quarry. And then further up from like Sailboat Cove, you've got kind of the railroad track area. There's a bunch of timber over there. So yeah, I would really be curious to know how much of that was productive, but I don't know. A lot of hard bottom over there for sure, but I don't know if that's where fish are spawning.
Well, John, as somebody that fishes there, if you had to kind of cap a limit of folks on there, what would you say?
I feel like a lot of people want to go to the creeks because, well, especially in a windy, in windy conditions, it seems like, you can always catch fish in the creek. So you kind of have people can feel like they have a better chance in there. I went to a creek just because I guess it suits my style of fishing a little bit better, but, man, I don't know. I feel like it could support 30 or 40 anglers. And I feel like over the last couple years that we've really been hitting El Dorado pretty hard with 20 or 30 guys. I have been surprised at where some of these tournament wins are coming from. And they're places that a lot of the locals don't fish. A lot of, when you go fish a Wednesday night jackpot, you're not seeing guys fish in a lot of these areas. So I think you're probably right. It probably fishes small. You've got contributing factors like hybrids and white perch and, big crappie populations and stuff that I think are contributing to that. But I think it probably fishes a little bit bigger than we give it credit for. But I don't think 40 anglers would be too much. But again, like Jay was saying, maybe the water levels might have something to do with that, because that really takes out a large part of, like the north end and stuff like that. So a lot of the creeks, it's going to rule out a lot of those scenarios. But I just can't see, maybe 50 guys might be tough. Maybe. I don't know. But I bet you if we put 70 guys out there, I bet you we would learn a lot about. I bet you we would be surprised for the better. I really feel like that. The more information I get about that lake, the more impressed I am with it. And I think, well, you were talking about earlier, Jay or Cole, about its kind of history of being a tough lake has contributed to the bigger fish. But as you guys found out, there's a lot of little fish in there too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of happy with seeing the results as a guy who gets to fish El Dorado, fairly often. El Dorado kicks my butt. It does. But I went and I took my bass boat out a week before the tournament, and I spent a few hours at the marina, and I caught, 3 fish for 9.5 pounds. I mean, there's good ones in there. So, I mean, that's good. And then a lot of guys were complaining about the size. So, there's a good, next generation, it seems like there's a lot of good smaller fish that are going to help out with that population. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll have some of the El Dorado biologists on and maybe talk about what they're seeing. You see, a lot of focus on like walleye and stuff like that there. It's a huge crappie lake, like you were saying, Cole. There's a lot of really big crappie in that lake, and a lot of them. But yeah, I think it could support 50, and you'd probably see similar percentages as what we saw today. But Okay, so we've got let me see. Let me go back over here. How do you guys just maybe for upcoming tournaments, El Dorado may be a little bit of an outlier, I feel like, with the conditions and how people had to fish and stuff like that. But how do you guys try to set yourself apart from the other anglers on the water? You've got finesse guys, you've got power fishing guys, you've got, people that fish similarly to you. What is one, not necessarily a bait, but what is one thing that you do? Like you guys both talked about turning the graph off. Like when I'm up super shallow in like a creek situation, I might do that. But like, what's one thing that you do, Jay? Can you think of anything that you do in particular that you try to set yourself apart from other people?
I honestly, I don't really know. It's a hard question for me. I fish a lot and I put a lot of time in on the water, but I mean, I don't like listening to Cole talk. Cole has the science behind why what works,
Yeah.
I have the, the gut feeling that this is going to work. But what separates me from somebody else, I don't really know, to be honest.
Sure.
I just make a lot of casts and kind of go with what I feel like is going to work.
Yeah. And if it doesn't,
watch a Jay at a tournament, you're going to do all right. So
if it doesn't, I have, the next thing that I feel like is going to work. And after I do that 3 or 4 times, then the problems hit.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people don't have that intuition. And I think that intuition and that gut feeling that you talk about that you can't explain, that comes from time on the water, right? I mean, and
you can hand somebody the same bait you're using and, they can't catch a fish on it right beside you telling them how to use it, but
I've been that guy next to the guy catching all the fish. Like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. It's time
Cole?
on the water, really.
Yeah, and that's absolutely, yeah. Cole?
I don't know that I do anything too different than anyone else. I will say one thing that's helped me a lot beyond just time on the water. That's number one, right? But I think it's mindset. And as an example of that mindset, having 2 hours on El Dorado before the tournament, I had caught 2 fish, one that was over 18 and one that was like 14 and a half. And I told Mark, who I was camping with, also my partner in the tournament, that my goal tomorrow is to catch a keeper limit. If I can catch a limit over 15 inches, I'll go home happy, whether that puts me in 21st place, or first place. And I think a lot of folks that are new to the sport, they get so competitive with the field. They see the guy working the same bank coming towards them as their competition. And while they're maybe on paper, that's true. I think you have to kind of look inside and say, hey, I'm going to be self-competitive. What am I capable of this tournament? What can I control? And having that shift in mindset has really allowed me to hunker down and ultimately slow down to say, hey, this is a shoreline I have. I'm not across the lake when someone else submits a 20-inch fish, but what can I do on this piece of shoreline? What's the best that it can offer? So that little shift of just being competitive with yourself instead of the person fishing next to you has helped me a lot and just really set my goals. Each tournament's different. Sometimes it's just catching 5 fish. We've been on those lakes before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about, I think mindset is a big part of it. I think that, guys that have been doing this for a while, you hear a lot about them catching their 5th fish late in the day. There's those times where, and I think that, people that are new to the sport, a lot of the times in that situation, they'll get in their own head about it. And, you aren't focusing on what you're doing at that point. I feel like, I just feel like you're more okay with the fact that you don't have that 5 fish limit at 8 a.m., right? If you don't have that 5, and you may be in the situation because you have all the experience and all the time on the water, like Jay having your limit early. But if you don't have that, then you're not ruling out the rest of the day because you know how it can all play out. Confidence, maybe like positive mental attitude, like you can look at it a few different ways, but
yeah, I mean, good or bad, you fish different when you're frustrated. You have to ask yourself, is that going to be a good thing or a bad thing? Sometimes you burn that crankbait a little harder and it helps you catch fish.
Yeah.
Other times it's a little too fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tried so hard not to get in my this weekend because I think I lost 4 in a row. That's how I started my morning. I lost 2 on the buzzbait. And then I think I lost 2 on the shaky head. And then I caught a fish. And then I lost in 1. And then like I lost 6 fish. Like I might catch 6 fish in a normal tournament. I mean, I normally don't catch a lot of fish. So me losing 6 fish was like, am I going to catch another fish? Like I had to talk to myself. Like I have video of me talking out loud, like, get it together, man. Like, you're going to be fine. Like we've got plenty. Like I had to go through all that but yeah, like just don't count yourself out. I think that's a big part of it too. But, you also talked about like boat positioning too. And that's something that a lot of these guys maybe don't think about early on. And maybe you mentioned it, but are you like a nosing into the wind guy, or how do you combat that?
I like to think underneath the water. So if a bass is going to be shallow wide, they're spawning, you need to throw a bait that sits on their head, right? That pisses them off. But if they're up shallow, they're likely in the summertime going to be facing the shoreline, right? Waiting for something to jump into the water, crawfish to move off of a really shallow place. And so kind of understanding, okay, that's a scenario where I'm back versus some other fish are going to actually, in a high wind situation, turn around and wait for bait fish that get caught in the wind, they get pushed up along the bank. And so I just kind of always think about their forage and where are they going to be facing? Then I try to get to their backs because I don't want them to see me. So,
okay. What about you, Jay? As far as
I don't
boat positioning,
nose into the wind if it's windy. That's the easiest control. I haven't taken an anchor with me or power pole or anything for probably 3 years.
Yep.
So I'm, pedaling constantly a little bit to keep my position, basically.
Yep.
And do the best I can with that, I guess. I don't know. Like I said again, Cole has the science behind and thinks about it from the under the water, and I kind of just do what I can with what I have, I think. And
I'm the same way, and I've had that conversation with myself, like, man, I need to get an anchor and maybe get, like an anchor trolley system back on there and, get one of those, deals that just automatically can, what do they call it? Like the anchor bomb, wizard. Anchor wizard thing. Yeah. Like I've thought about, but I'm just like you, like I'm just, my spot lock is my pedal drive, and I'm just, that's how I stay in place is I'll just pedal into the wind. And
bad thing is I have an XI3 with spot lock on it sitting in the garage that
I do too. And
I used like
that
3
sucker
times
off
last year, and I haven't used it yet this year. It's cool some days, but I in my head, I fish way better without it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a pain to me. It's all about loading it into the truck. That's what, if it was
wrong too, it's another battery to make sure it's connected right. Another boat that's got to have batteries in it. So even though I use it, it's got to be the right scenario. But there you go, Hip. At the end of the day, I probably don't put that on my kayak, but about half the time.
Yeah. Yep. Ace says it's pretty hard for him. He's got a transom mounted trolling motor, so it helps him get from spot to spot. Though that's, you see a lot of guys that run like torpedoes and stuff, and that's It's more of just getting from one spot to the next, and still kind of got to get yourself out of the wind in that scenario. But anyways, well, I feel like we've got some more information on El Dorado Lake this year. We've seen the potential that it has. I think we keep it on the schedule. I think it's one of those grinder events. I think the Wilson events, I think that's where we go slay them. We have those events where everybody's going to do fairly well. You're going to see those limits creep further down into the bottom of the field, I guess you would say. But I kind of like those grinder events, and not everybody's going to do well in them, but the potential's there. 93 inches. And then you really do have, 87 and a half, 86 and 3/4, 83 and 3/4, 81 and 2/4, 81, 79. All the way down to 10th place, you're over 70 inches. So any thoughts? Do we do away with El Dorado yet? It's like, I think that's the one that's on the chopping block more than any lake on the schedule, I feel like.
Probably a negative thought, but I'd do away with Minelands and keep El Dorado. I don't like Minelands as a tournament place.
Yeah.
I think, to me, every lake has a home advantage in a way, but Minelands
it has way more.
It's a whole different story.
Yep, I agree. What'd you say, Cole?
So I agree with Jay. I think that's a good statement. It's and again, you think you just look at the time of year. I think you timed this lake well. Just didn't have water. I think it will next year.
Let's hope.
It's
got to rain.
Yeah.
Milford. What about how many of you guys want to see Milford on the schedule? Jay probably doesn't have an opinion on it.
It doesn't matter to me.
Is that any closer to you than some of these other places?
Yeah, it's a little closer. It's a lot of my drives are 4.5 hours. Big Hill's 4, Minelands would be 4.5. Bone Creek was about 4.5.
Yeah.
So Milford's probably 2.5.
We'll have to get an update on AOI here soon. So see how that's all shaken out. Cole finally got his AOI prize from last year.
It's a sweet rod. I appreciate it, John.
Yeah. So shout out to Davis Custom Rods on that one. And it's been sitting in my garage here for a little while now. So sorry about the delay.
New, so good job holding on to it, not throwing a reel on it.
There you go. All right. Well, anything that we might have missed that you guys want to mention before we call it a night? And maybe which event? Tell me this. Which event are you looking forward to the most on the schedule that's remaining? Jay?
Oh,
Wilson.
It's going to sound stupid, but I don't like fishing Wilson tournaments.
Oh, yeah. It does sound stupid because you win them all.
Yeah. That's the only place I feel pressure. Everywhere else, nobody expects anything,
Yeah, okay.
I've won like 4 straight and then finally didn't win a couple last year, so maybe the pressure's off now.
Yeah. Cole?
I would say it's going to be Melbourne or Wilson for me. Clearwater, back to that. So those two I enjoy quite a bit. And I will say this, John, I just want to give you a shout out. Thanks for running the show, opening up your place of work at RMP to host us for the awards ceremony and all that you guys do to get these tournaments put on. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. And I thought it was a pretty cool deal that we got to have it there. I think everybody was pretty wore out, and I hated that I had to kind of move it along a little bit quicker than I wanted to. But I think everybody was kind of ready to get on the road. It seemed like a lot of people showed up, so that was cool to have everybody there. And maybe the air conditioning and the food was a contributor. But that was awesome that they allowed us to do that there. And I think that the next El Dorado event we'll be able to have it there again. So yeah, and then shout out to everybody else that has a hand in the club, because it's a team effort for sure. But I think we got a pretty cool thing going, and we'll just keep on doing our thing. But Ace is going to get some redemption at Winfield. I don't think there is a Winfield tournament, Ace. So you'll just have to go hit me up. We'll go get some redemption. We'll go get some redemption on Winfield, and we'll just write some random numbers on our hands when we fish that one. So, all right, guys. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast tonight, and look forward to seeing you guys at the next event, and definitely going to expect to see you guys near the top as time goes on this season. So
thanks, John. Take care.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Yep. Have a good one, guys. All right, there we go. We've got episode 16, season 2, and I want to thank Jay and Cole for coming on and kicking my butt out at El Dorado. I had a good time out there, caught quite a few fish, but Jay just absolutely hammered down on him, 93 inches. Very impressive. You guys got to see the fish there that he submitted. And Cole definitely had a great day on the water as well. So El Dorado Lake definitely has potential. I feel like it has gotten better over the years. We've had tournaments out there with some pretty rough standings at the end of the day, and this was not one of them. I think all things considered, with the wind and so many areas of that lake that were just completely unfishable. I think that we got some really good information, and there's a lot of life in that lake. Yes, there's probably a lot of areas that are unproductive, but when you throw 20-mile-an-hour winds into the scenario, a lot of those productive areas they're just not fishable. So some of those areas were just completely untapped. But anyways, guys, I want to thank you guys for joining us. If you're looking into getting into kayak fishing tournaments, especially here in the Kansas area, give me a shout. Go over to KansasKayakAnglers.com. We've also got the Kansas Bass Nation Kayak Anglers as well that you can compete in and earn an invite to go fish the National Bassmaster Series. So we're going to be sending at least one person to that. We did last year. Shout out to Tim Seagraves for repping us really well out there this past year. So if you guys are looking into competing at a national level, that's a good opportunity. And we've got some other opportunities with the All-American Kayak Series. Really would love to see us go out there and really represent for the state of Kansas next year. So that's definitely something that you ought to put on the schedule as well. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. If you're interested in getting into some kind of side pot tournament action, check out F5 Rod Company. Shout out to these guys for supporting the podcast, and get into that little tournament. You're looking at a $500 cash payout if you can get a cast to catch video of you catching fish on an F5 rod. So if you're looking at upgrading and getting into some new rods, definitely go check them out. And you can find them over on f5rods.com. I'm going to go ahead and sign off, guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.